Well, good morning and thanks for joining us again. Today I want to look at the topic of the way of the cross as Jesus points the way. Uh, as we prepare for Easter, and it's important to reflect upon this very special time. It would help if you have your Bibles open at Matthew 16:13 to 28. We're going to focus on that. In verse 24, Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it." The concept of the cross both puzzles and confronts us. What are we to make of this challenge? Christianity is a strange religion in that it has as its key symbol the cross, a symbol of death. Some groups, like Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, refuse to use the symbol of the cross because it's a symbol of death. We could say, wasn't the purpose of becoming a Christian to make our lives better, not harder? To bring comfort to our suffering, not to willingly embrace suffering? But it's not the object of the cross we remember and honour and revere. It is the event of the cross. That's the crucifixion of Jesus. So what did the cross mean to Jesus? Well, at that time, the crucifixion was a very cruel, humiliating public execution. And even many Romans considered it barbaric and wanted it banned. So to take up the cross was not simply to be willing to die. It implied being willing to be publicly humiliated, to be declared a criminal. The pictures we see today of Jesus' crucifixion are generally sanitized and spiritualized so as not to upset and offend. But the event of a crucifixion was very gruesome. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, on the night that Jesus was arrested, Jesus agonized in prayer. You find that in Matthew 26. He fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Jesus was willing to die horrendous death to secure our salvation. He was prepared to take up and endure the cross, to do what had to be done for you and me. But he didn't prefer to die on a cross. You see, it's not about glorifying or spiritualizing suffering. While good can come out of suffering, suffering in itself is not good. Taking up the cross for Jesus was a total surrender to the will of God, his Father, to do whatever it takes to reconcile us to God, to bring salvation and forgiveness. Taking up our cross is choosing God's way, not our way, or the world's way. As we've said, the cross was a symbol of shame and humiliation. And many Christians today, in our Western society at least, are reluctant to be open and public about their faith. And I think out of shame and embarrassment, fear of ridicule and opposition, sometimes it's because they're not sure what to say or how to defend themselves. But throughout Jesus' ministry, there were many possible sidetracks and detours. And it's not just the temptations in the wilderness. He could have compromised with the Pharisees, become a significant leader in Israel. He could have focused on a healing ministry and become very popular. Imagine what Jesus could have done if he'd a bit more diplomatic and lived a bit longer. But you see, Jesus didn't just come to be a healer or a religious leader. Jesus came to bring salvation, and that meant facing the crucifixion. Jesus points the way of the cross. He knows what his mission is, what his priority is. And when Jesus entered Jerusalem, he faced open temptation to be made a popular king. And the opinion polls were very much in his favour, but Jesus has tunnel vision. He was not interested in public opinion, only God's opinion. In the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Scriptures, in Isaiah 53, it talks about the suffering servant. Verse 5 and 6, it says, "He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed." And in Isaiah 50, 6-8, it says, "I offered my back to those who beat me, my cheeks to those who pulled out my beard. I did not hide my face from mocking and spitting. Because the sovereign Lord helps me, I will not be disgraced. Therefore I have set my face like a flint, and I know I will not be put to shame. He who vindicates me is near. Who then will bring charges against me? Let us face each other. Who is my accuser? Let him confront me." You see, Jesus made clear, at least to his disciples, where his path was headed. The disciples heard Jesus' words, but they struggled to understand. It was so alien to all that they had learned and understood about the Messiah, even though it was there in the Old Testament. But Jesus set his face, his will, like a flint, focused not just on death on a cross, but complete surrender, deference to do God's will and purpose, whatever it is. The words, "For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it," captures something about what Jesus was about. In our reading from Matthew 16, we see how the disciples are beginning to understand who Jesus is. When Jesus asks, "Who do you say that I am?" Peter says, "You are the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of the living God." And it's then that Jesus begins to explain to the disciples that he, the Messiah, must face rejection, suffering, and even death. This shift in focus is important because the significance of death as a means of salvation centers on the one who is dying on the cross. Not just some radical religious teacher, but the Son of God, the Messiah. But this jars with Peter's and all the disciples' expectation of the Messiah. He doesn't want a crucified Messiah. But Jesus is pointing the way of the cross, the way of sacrifice. Discipleship is still about walking the way of the cross. Taking up our cross means doing whatever it takes. It is being faithful and obedient to Jesus and fulfilling his call to mission. Taking up the cross is not a way of earning salvation or being worthy of God's love. God already loves us. He loves you and forgives you. It is obedience to Jesus, an expression of our love for him. Well, I hope that helps you in your preparation for Easter. And thanks for listening. And now I just invite you to get with a few people and have a chat about this and have discussed these questions. What does the cross come to symbolize for most people in our community? You see many people wearing crosses as jewelry. So what does the cross mean for many people? Secondly, how do you respond to the statement that it's not the object of the cross we revere, remember, and honour, it is the event of the cross, the crucified Jesus? And thirdly, what would it mean for you to take up the cross? What task or path has Jesus put before you that your natural human response would be to say, "No way, Lord"? And fourthly, how would you respond to the comment, "Isn't the purpose of becoming a Christian to make our lives better, not harder? To bring comfort to our suffering, not willingly embrace suffering? So what's the point of becoming a Christian?" Well, thanks for listening. And I hope you have a really blessed and good Easter. And amidst all those things you celebrate, remember Jesus.